Deborah Shiel. I am hosting this session for the CSEdX 2024 Day 1 Stream 2.2. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining us. The conference theme is the radical reimagination, talking about rethinking learning and teaching and student engagement for regional universities. So I know a couple of us have come out some really interesting sessions on that, and this will be a different, another lot of interesting sessions. I will start with an acknowledgement of country. I pay my respects to First Nations elders, past, present and emerging, across the many lands where Charles Sturt University campuses, students and staff are located. In particular, I acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundungurra and Biripi peoples. I also pay my respects to any First Nations colleagues in this session today. So this session has two presentations, two roundtable presentations. Both of them are 30 minutes long and both of them are really keen to get your insights into the discussions. So the first one is going to be hosted by Tasfia, and she's looking at fostering equity in regional education. The second will be Lucy Zuman and team and colleagues and Tasfia's colleagues as well. And they're Lucy's looking at adult learning principles and thinking about, are they still golden? So both these discussions will involve you actively in finding out more about these issues and how they impact you and how they impact regional reimagination, really. There is time in the roundtables for questions, discussions, etc. But if you do want to put something in the chat, please feel free to. And other than that, I will hand over to you now, Tasfia, and we'll get on with the interactive section of this roundtable discussions.
Hi, I'm Tasfia Rahman. I'm one of the first year study advisors at Embedded Tutor Program under the Division of Student Success. And today I will be kind of having a discussion around what kind of worked during my sessions, which I hold, and I tried to kind of present it in a way so everyone can relate to it and generalize it, and then we can have a discussion around it, and it'll be on the framework, on a research framework. Okay, let's see. Is everyone able to see my presentation?
Yep.
Okay, cool. The topic for the roundtable today is fostering equity in regional education, and doing this by integrating an intersectional pedagogy with client-centered transition support. It's very loaded, the topic. I just put everything in the topic, but I'll slowly unpack it and it'll make sense, believe me. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about our program for everyone to kind of make sense as to what I do. So the Embedded Tutor Program started around 3 years back, and it works on two things. One is feed forward and pedagogy of kindness. So what we do is our program has tutors, and students send us assignments, and we review it as a peer, not like a teacher, but as a peer. And then we kind of have a 20-minute Zoom session with them and discuss places where they can improve, or basically constructive feedback. So it works on the mechanism that, we want to give the feedback before they actually get graded. So they can actually work on the constructive feedback. Okay. So the program is based on pedagogy of kindness, and I personally have added some of my touch to it, and and tried to like I've worked on this for about 3 years, and I get to see very different kind of students and students from all kinds of backgrounds. So I just see their assignment, and then I just see them on the screen. That's it. That's the total information I have. And then within that 20 minutes, I try to have a very constructive discussion regarding not only like very specific to their assignment, and how that specific kind of trying to find a pattern and relate it to how they can actually apply those techniques to overall study. So these sessions not only give like for me, it's not only just giving us feedback on the assignment, but also kind of empowering and building that confidence. So there'll be 3 pedagogical approaches which I kind of experimented with. One is the intersectional pedagogy. One is the transition pedagogy, which is also part of our program. And another, which is very personal to me, coming from a psychology background, is Carl Rogers' client-centered approach. And I want to kind of tell everyone that even though these sound very, very loaded, but when you look into it, these are concepts which we can relate very easily. And if we apply it to our workplace, I feel it'll improve, according to me. Okay, let's see. Okay, so what I have kind of tried to do in my presentation is not make it very, very, very academic, but I'll just give you a background of the key thinkers and the concepts which I kind of applied. So there's Crenshaw, and then there's Carl Rogers, and then there's Edmund Husserl, and then there is the Yarning Circle. So I kind of see them as my group, and if they were with me right now, what are the things they would say to me? So kind of so that's why I didn't put up all these references, and I'm just going to refer them as Crenshaw, Roger from an Aboriginal perspective, and Hustler. Okay, and this is how I usually talk to my students. So in the intersectional approach, what the most important thing Crenshaw kind of said was looking at things from a very isolated perspective. So it's very important that we understand that every situation is unique, and this kind of relates to phenomenology. And what I feel is why I chose all these thinkers is somewhere they're all, what do you say, post-positivist thinkers and post-positivist ideas, I feel. And they all kind of have a same underlying philosophy of what do you say, from a quantitative to a qualitative approach, if you say it in research perspective. So what I'm trying to say is, previously in the research paradigm, everything was like the reality existed, and we have to understand it. It's an objective reality. But then this research paradigm, like I feel when especially Edmund Husserl came in and kind of shifted to, no, your reality is the truth, and we will look at it from there. So it was for me as a researcher, it's a huge shift. So, but we as practitioners still kind of have that positivist mentality and really kind of don't include it in our practice, even though we say that this is very, very important, but we don't usually include it. So I kind of try to see if look at everything from lived experience perspective of the person, from a client-centered approach, and mainly if you look at it from a paradigm shift, from a positivist to a constructivist approach, from a quantitative to a qualitative approach. And okay, so the main constructs of Crenshaw, which I kind of experimented with, was interconnected identities. So validating, saying that, yes, your reality is your reality, and that's the whole truth. And you will tell me how you are experiencing whatever problem you're experiencing from your lens. I will not make the problem for you. You are going to be telling me what is the problem you are facing. Okay. And and another thing is, in terms of systems of oppression, our program itself works on a peer review process. So I approach to them not as a person of higher authority or lower authority, but as the person's peer. So when I'm having a conversation, that kind of, I kind of feel that it gives that person, it opens my vulnerabilities and that person's vulnerabilities as well. So so if that person's talking about a concept, I take it as totality and I try to tell him, okay, these are the things I think, instead of saying, you're wrong, or this is how it is. I take his reality as the whole truth. And then I try to relate it. Okay, how can I connect it to an academic lens? Or how can I make that reality more visible? Okay, that is some of the things I have tried to adopt from Crenshaw. Some of the things I adopted from Carl Rogers was the client-centered approach, which is also, if from a psychology perspective, positive psychology is a very recent development in psychology, and it's when we see and it's also paradigm shift from looking at mental health as a problem, not looking at it as a problem, but rather as as health, like something we can work on, like confidence, empathy, and not only looking at diseases and abnormal psychology. So moving from that mentality to being able to use psychology in workplaces or in education, in places where we can make a positive improvement in the setting. Okay, so specifically, so this is in the school in which Carl Roger comes from, and specific to concepts he has given is unconditional positive regard and ideal self versus real self. So he kind of says that if a person gets a space in which he is not judged, does not have any kind of conditions, and is a safe space, then that is the optimum space for the person to grow. So now me as a tutor have to create that space. So if I'm creating a space which is a very power dynamic, very kind of hostile, then that unconditional positive regard won't happen. So when you're in your setting, think how you can make your workplace like that. And another very important concept of Carl Roger is ideal self and real self. So this is, and this mainly the very important concept in this is the discrepancy. So when you tell, and the thing I take out from this is you ask the student, okay, how do you ideally see this problem? Or how do you ideally see yourself? Whichever way this problem comes out, you say it like that. And then you say, okay, this is the ideal. Now then I tell them, what is the reality? This is the reality. Now, this is the discrepancy. Now tell me how to turn this ideal to reality. Or if you can't turn it to reality, you have to accept it. And then you'll have a more adjusted way of whatever you are going to be doing. Okay, this is my way of looking at Rogers. And another person is Hustler, and I think I've discussed quite a bit about him. And it's mainly about the paradigm shift from positivism to constructivism, from quantitative to qualitative. And the main thing is going hands-on into phenomenology. Okay, and that's a method which is new, but it's gonna work, believe me. And another thing which I kind of picked up from Yarning Circle from Aboriginal practices was storytelling, and it's something I usually use also while teaching. Is so when you tell a story, all parts make sense. So you kind of so the student itself also kind of gets where is it their knowledge is missing, or what is it that they're not looking at. So the whole picture kind of comes into being when you tell it as a story rather than a part. They're able to visualize it. Okay, so I ask them, okay, so I tell them, okay, you are a child psychologist and this child is right in front of you. Tell me what are you feeling and what is the thought that's going to come to your head first. And from there, we keep exploring as to how we can develop. So you first visualize it, you tell them a story, you visualize it, and then you kind of go into talking about your shared experience. Not tell them what to do, but what are the things you could have faced in that academic space while you were doing that. And it could be something very simple. For example, especially with the references, the problems can be very, very minute. But if you, fix the right place, they'll not have any problem with referencing for the rest of their life. So a lot of people struggle with, why do we do references? It's separating your idea from another person's idea, and able to do that mentally first and then write. Okay. So, kind of sharing that, telling them the story and saying it in a way that they can relate to, and saying it in a way that, yes, your reality is the truth. Okay. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open for discussion, and I'm just gonna give everyone a kind of a framework which I work with. Okay. So think of what is the outcome you want. What is the ideal outcome you want in your workplace? So I don't know what is it that you're working on. So what you desire. So in my case, it was equity. Okay. And then my independent variable was what you can control to make an influence. Okay. So for me, it was pedagogies. Okay. These are the places I had control over. I don't have control over independent variable. I have a control over this. So telling the students, this is where you have control. What can you do to make an improvement according to you, open to you? This is the outcome you want. Then comes the dependent variable. Dependent variable is, where is it that you want your influence to be seen? Okay. So for me, it was regional education or education in general, because we are a regional university, so all our students are regional. And methodology is where I'm going to tell you guys that this is a good methodology which worked for me. So this is basically, what is your success plan? So from me, it started with constructivism paradigm, and from there, so start from the very beginning. What is it like? Imagine, how do you want it? Start from what is the philosophy you want, or what is it that you imagine it to be, and then slowly see what are all the writers, or what are all the thinkers talking about in that space, and then choose a methodology. People just choose a methodology, but that is actually the most important thing, I feel. So I'm giving an open space to everyone to kind of think like a problem solving session, that this is my workplace, if I wanted to get this outcome, this is my what is my independent variable, what is it that I have control over, what is it that I want seen, what is the methodology that's going to work. Okay. Objectives. So I think, so these are the main 3 objectives, like I said, will be I kind of used. So one is, so for intersectional approach, it was balancing power dynamics, valuing diverse student experiences. For client-centered approach, it was promoting empathy, self-exploration, and confidence. And in the transition pedagogy, what I felt, okay, so I kind of didn't touch much on transition pedagogy. So it's kind of focusing on the fact that this person's transitioning from a particular learning space to another learning space, or a particular workplace to a learning space. It could be anything. So it's that transition has to be, for it to be smooth, we need to understand what are the gaps that they're facing. And it's not a lot, but it's very unique to those students. So it's kind of focusing on, okay, tell me, where are the problems that you're getting stuck at? So I will help you with that. Okay, referencing it, this particular, okay, this. So in terms of my workplace, in the transition pedagogy, students, when they kind of move from schools, they have a certain kind of way of learning, and it's very different when we do it in an academic or in a research space. So kind of giving them that, telling them that story, making them visualize that now you're going to be entering a different space, and you're going to be expected, these are going to be the different ways in which the way you're going to be writing is going to be different, or the way you're going to be expressing yourself is going to be different, how you're going to be referencing, it's going to be different. So those small things which helps the person to kind of transfer from a particular set to another set, and also acknowledging the fact that we host a lot of adult students, and most of our students are adults. So these are people who already have a lot of lived experiences. So honor that, and see how you can transition that to this space. Okay. And when I'm seeing, so whenever I say academic lens, what first I kind of do is I tell them, okay, tell me your reality. What you can tell me your school reality or your home reality or your work reality. If you're a caseworker, for example, what do you do? Then I tell them, explore this from an academic lens. How can you do that? So I tell them, what is your population? How a similar population would be a paper you could read, or it could be a similar construct you're working on is a paper you can read. So kind of connecting the student to how that person's space could be actually go till an academic space, or I can actually be able to bring academy over here, like both ways. So
Yeah.
so it's a lot about saying, validating first their reality, and then showing them the path, and then giving them a constructive kind of, leaving them with that hope that these are your strengths, these are the things you can do, and these are ways you can. So kind of not giving a person answer, but showing them the path by asking them questions, where are you struggling with genuinely, okay? Not something out of the blue, okay? And it really helps with an assignment with me, so I actually know what is the writing, or what is it, like it reflects. And it would be initial writing, so there might have chunks of this thing. I never see things as like this is plagiarism. I would be like, okay, if you have a chunk, why have you put this chunk? So they will tell me why they have put it, and then I can tell them how they can actually make this chunk into something useful.
Thank you, Tasfia, for that. I'm sorry to interrupt. You've got 10 minutes left, and I know that you might not see, but you've got a couple of people who do. There's a contribution in the chat, but Riley has her hand up.
Okay,
thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, Tasfia, thank you. Did I pronounce your name correct there?
Tasfia.
Tasfia, sorry. I'm Riley. Nice to meet you. And I love your approach. I love that you're presenting this, because the research teaching nexus is so important, and the fact that you're highlighting this research informed philosophy that informs your teaching. I just put in the chat there just to let others know, because often staff members and colleagues like to ask me about promotion, and the exact approach that you took in your presentation, putting up thinkers and their pictures and saying this is who I drew on from my research that aligned with my teaching, is what I did back in the day. We used to actually have presentations when we were trying to get from senior lecturer to associate professor. And when I saw yours, I thought that I had the pictures of the post-structuralists and the qualitative researchers that I was drawing on in my research, and then explained how that informs my teaching approach. And I also use a critical qualitative phenomenological approach. And then I gave examples of how that, allows me to collaborate with the students and learn from them. So it's just so wonderful to hear that you're in that role and you're doing it that way, and promoting to, and maybe most of us are already doing it this way as well, but it's good to hear where you're coming from, and for all of us to stop and reflect about, what is informing my teaching and how important that is. And I don't know if you were asking us to think about the dependent and independent variables, but if you were, mine was that my goal is to create passion, create intrinsic motivation in students. And so the way that's my sort of ultimate goal, to get students loving, they came to university, in my case, it's sport and exercise psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm actually a critical sociologist teaching psychology, which is always fun. But so the students love sport and exercise, so I want to ignite that passion and intrinsic motivation in them. And I guess the dependent variable is making the teaching, accessible, approachable, interesting, and relevant to them. But also that, I guess, independent variable is, seeing the outcomes of that. For example, I often get students then finding something, going, oh, Riley, have you seen this? And then I'll incorporate that in the class, because it's something that they've gone and found on their own that's related to their interests and related to the content. And then that creates discussion, so that collaborative approach. So, and then I know that they're engaging with the content and bringing their passions, and then we can build that intrinsic motivation and love of learning together. So I just wanted to share that and say thank you.
And so I just wanted to kind of especially this slide, I kind of wanted to make it like relatable to how you would look at it if it's a problem to you. So if it's anything like a workplace problem or especially a workplace problem for me. So then you can, if you want to look at it from a academic lens, look at it like this, like what is it that I want? What is the outcome? This, if you look at it like this, your visuals will like you will be able to turn into reality. Like this is a tool to turn your imagination into reality. That's all I'm just trying to say. That if you are involved enough in interested to kind of be in research, you do something interesting in research. And I find it very interesting. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Tasfia. I think we all find it really very interesting, and how lovely to hear pedagogy is referred to as a variable factor. I think that from my perspective, it was a lovely influence on me. So thank you for that. And there's a couple of moments left. So would you like to open up to any particular question from anyone?
Yep.
I know Brett had mentioned earlier this bringing the theory to practice, that and the nexus of research and practice. I think that's something that resonated with many of us here.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if you were asking for somebody else to talk. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. I'll just add, thanks, Deb, for throwing me in there. Yeah, look, I loved the bit about linking those philosophers and theory to education. I wrote a book last year, and again, I make that a kind of fundamental thing myself. And whenever I talk about what I promote with learning and teaching, I always go back to some of the fundamental philosophies and theories, because it really helps us understand what we're doing with our teaching, what our students are doing, how they're learning. So it's incredibly important, and as you indicated, it gives those links with research, and I think it really helps us understand what we're doing with our teaching and learning, and justifies it and helps us kind of evaluate it. So yeah, I just think that's wonderful. But we do need to keep in touch the practice with theory, with learning and teaching. That's a fundamental aspect of it. So yeah, well done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Someone raised their hands.
Oh, that was me again, but I didn't want to interrupt if somebody else had a question first. But I was just going to clarify that that the research approach that I use is in a completely different field, like health and sociology and aging and leisure. But regardless of that, it was that theoretical, phenomenological approach and critical qualitative research that then I applied in the teaching context. Just to clarify that I don't do, like, I've written a couple of articles, but not many about actual, the research of teaching per se, if that makes sense. Just to clarify that. But no, it's brilliant what you're doing, so thank you.
We can collaborate if you want.
Sounds good.
That's what we like to hear. That's fabulous. What a lovely way to finish that particular presentation. If we've got some collaboration going on, that would be lovely. And again, the bringing that theory to the practice and the understanding of how it impacts our teaching practice, such an important thing. And it leads beautifully, Tasfia, thank you, to our next roundtable presentation with Lucy and her team, which is going to be talking about adult learning principles, and is it time to reconsider them? So I won't say any more. I think it'll be very interesting to get a take on that. So first of all, Tasfia, thank you very, very much. And I'm sure people will want to continue the conversation outside. And secondly, Lucy, if you and your team are ready, then we will move on to your session, please.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Tasfia. That was a really interesting an informative session you've just held. So thank you. And it's hard to follow on from such information. I'm just going to share my screen. So just give a thumbs up to make sure you can see that screen. Yep, thank you. Wonderful. All right. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending my roundtable presentation. My name is Lucy Zuman. I'm a lecturer in rural education and I'm a clinical educator from Three Rivers Department of Rural Health here at Charles Sturt University, and I'm on the Orange campus. Today, I will be facilitating a discussion around adult learning, with the topic being Are 50-year-old adult learning principles still golden? Exploring the application of andragogy to the modern learner. Literature focused on models and theories that contribute to the formulation and understanding of adult learning has been extensively published over the past 50 years. The major theories of andragogy, self-directed learning, and transformational learning are often applied in the development of curriculum and application of practice in response to the needs of adult learners in a tertiary education setting. Malcolm Knowles's model of adult learning was first formally theorised in the 1970s and was then developed into 6 principles throughout the 1980s. These foundational principles have been a baseline of reference across several generations, and while they have been adapted across contexts, generally the basis of these principles have remained the same. I wanted to take you on a brief history lesson to explore and understand the evolution of andragogy so that we can have a solid understanding of the adult learning theory before diving into our own critiques of the principles. During that time, we will examine the application of andragogy in the teaching and learning of our own students. The aim of this roundtable discussion is to generate new ideas and summarise and share current views, trends and approaches to adult learning and teaching. So in ancient Greece, around the time of 387 BC, Greek philosopher Plato developed a theory regarding education as a means to achieve both individual justice and social justice, with justice in this sense meaning excellence. According to Plato, individual justice means that individuals develop their ability to the fullest. Social justice means that individuals exist harmoniously in a society. Plato believed that individual justice and social justice were so interwoven that one is meaningless without the other, and stated, in order to teach human excellence, educators need to know the nature of man and how to develop it. Fast forward to 1833, German high school teacher Alexander Kapp wrote a book entitled Plato's Educational Ideas, which includes all Plato's writing about education. During his work on this, Kapp noted Plato's papers involved young people and their education, but also adults and their education. He also noted the learning differences between his adult students in evening classes and his teenage students in day classes. As a result, Kapp's book contains a separate part that focuses on adult education, which he calls andragogy. Despite Kapp's use of the term andragogy having relevancy at the time, with particular reference to self-directed learning, it was harshly disputed, and the term was unused for almost 100 years. In 1921, the term reappeared in a report by German philosopher Eugen Rosenstock, in which he argued that adult education required special teachers, special methods, and a special philosophy, and he used the term andragogy to refer to these special requirements. Following this, in 1968, American educator Malcolm Knowles used the term andragogy to discuss the growing collection of knowledge about adult learners in comparison to the pedagogical model of childhood learning. By 1970, Knowles had introduced an andragogical model of learning, or adult learning theory, as a framework for understanding the process of how adults learn and retain new information. Andragogy means that instruction for adults needs to focus more on the process and less on the content being taught. In his proposal for andragogy, Knowles outlined 6 overarching principles that define adult learning, which aimed to guide educators who wanted to adopt andragogical teaching methods. The first principle is self-concept. With a focus on maturity developing as adults learn, Knowles describes self-concept as an adult becoming more independent and self-directed, where individuals take the initiative, with or without the help of others, in diagnosing their learning needs, formulating learning goals, identifying human and material resources for learning, choosing and implementing appropriate learning strategies, and evaluating learning outcomes. Principle 2 refers to learning experiences. Unlike children who have little life experience to use and learn from, adult learners are able to use their unique experiences to contribute to discussions and understand topics. Even if the concepts a teacher introduces are new, adult learners can refer to their lived experiences and connect the dots between past knowledge and new information. Principle 3 focuses on readiness to learn. The question, "What's in it for me?" is often front of mind for adult learners, even subconsciously when they are deciding what they are receptive to. Children are sponges and absorb information as they grow, but adults are more selective to their own interests and the impacts information will have on their personal, work, and social lives. Principle 4 looks at motivation. For children, motivation for learning is mostly external. This refers to external pressures that motivate learning, such as subject grading, consequences of failure, the threat of not getting a job in the future, or disappointing a teacher or parent. As children become adults, their motivation for learning shifts to more internal motivators, such as self-actualization, better quality of life, self-esteem, and confidence. Instead of learning to satisfy others, adults generally pursue education and training for themselves, which are directed to their own needs or wants. Principle 5 explores the need to know of learning. Before committing to a learning process, adults look at why they need to learn something and what the benefits will be for them before they commit. There's an emphasis on the value of what they are learning and on the resources they need to dedicate their time. And finally, Principle 6 explores orientation to learning. Adults are more likely to apply their knowledge to a skill if they're going to use it right away. Orientation to learning is about solving a problem and having relevance to life-based tasks. Adults will shape their learning around their life and other relevant factors, and they would prefer experience and practical-based tasks. Over many decades, andragogy has been a cornerstone of adult education. The theory has been used as a guide by adult educators in their planning and teaching with little change or adaptation over the years. There have been critiques of these principles, with some researchers debating whether adults actually do learn differently to children or whether assumptions of andragogy are appropriate in the modern teaching space. Some notable critiques have outlined, not all adults are self-directed. They still need guidance and structure along the way in their learning. Physical, cognitive, psychosocial characteristics in adults may affect their ability to apply life experiences to new knowledge. And some adults learn for fun. It's not always about solving a problem. Learning approaches and learning preferences of students in higher education have also evolved and changed across the generations. From my perspective, examination of technology changes, the COVID-19 pandemic, social influences, cultural shifts, and student expectations is front of mind. Today, I would like to facilitate discussions that place a critical lens on Knowles' 6 adult learning principles by collating our shared insights. We will reflect on the applicability of these learning principles for adult learners today and whether they are relevant in our current teaching space, particularly in response to student engagement. As mentioned earlier, the aim of this roundtable discussion is to generate new ideas and summarise and share current views, trends and approaches to adult learning and teaching. You will all be placed into breakout rooms and one of the 6 adult learning principles will be assigned to each group for discussion. Your group facilitator will be one of my incredible colleagues from Three Rivers Department of Rural Health, who will be there to guide you through some direct questions and discussion. Direct questions will include, is this principle applicable or relevant to the way your students learn and perform? What are you seeing in the classroom and what strategies do you use? What is informing your current teaching approach based on this learning principle? And what do you see are the influences on the way your students learn or apply their knowledge? Has this changed throughout your teaching career? That concludes my introduction. So you will now be allocated to a breakout room to discuss these adult learning principles, and we will return in 15 minutes for a quick summary. Okay, it looks like everyone's back now. Thank you. I was going through all the different breakout rooms and there was some really wonderful discussion happening. So thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'll collate the notes taken from each breakout room and create a document that outlines the discussions that have been had about each adult learning principle. So if you would like a copy of this document, can you please click on the Zoho form link in the chat that's coming, and you can add in your email address so I'll know exactly who's after it and who isn't. Now we've got 2 minutes left to go around and hear just 3 key points taken from each room discussion. If we could start with principle number 1, which was self-concept.
Sorry. Yep, I'll be really quick. We've noticed that some students disengage at times, and sometimes this is because they find different strategies to learn the material. Some of the other participants talked about the approach, like using active learning, the flipped classroom in the subject outline, and being really upfront in the first introduction. Also, since most of the courses are on, a lot of it's online now, there's less engagement, but it sometimes is more, just depends. Sorry, if anyone can interrupt me if you want to. Also depends on the course content as well. Like, for example, a language course, the students need to talk to each other, and that helps learn the material. And we should really prompt them on what works well for them as well. And looking at guiding their internal motivation. I'll leave it there, but we had a lot.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Julie. On to principle 2, which is all about learning experiences.
Thank you. We had some great discussions, thanks to everyone in our room. I guess we came to the conclusion that changing culture means that sometimes they have more knowledge than experience. We need to meet students where they're at, that it's a very relational thing, and that the principle is still very relevant, although we look to then transform knowledge and grow people from there. And there were some great strategies, can't go into all of them, but one of the key things, I think, we used to have secret classrooms. Now it's much more transparent and people can re-watch and re-look at things and bring out hopefully their lived experiences, which are very vast and dynamic.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nat. On to Principle 3, which is readiness to learn.
Hello, that was me.
Thanks,
We
Lise.
had a lot of very passionate discussion, but I think in a nutshell, a lot of what we talked about was that the context in which we live has changed a lot, and there's a lot of competing priorities for students these days, and it's having a lot of influence on the way they engage with learning and how they prioritize learning. We talked about the way to kind of that some people are getting around that, or that we think we need to move to, is being really transparent about the time requirements and expectations of studying, particularly because even though the context of how we live has changed, what we need to learn to be qualified at what we're going to be has not changed, nor has the time it takes to become qualified in that. So kind of changing a bit the way we frame our discussions around time prioritization and being really transparent about expectations.
Thank you, Elise. On to Principle 4, motivation.
Yeah, thank you. We also had a very good discussion, lots to think over, but basically what we said is even as adults, all of us still want to get a little gold star or a pat on the back sometimes, some good positive feedback, and that also continues to motivate us. So I don't think that we're immune to some external motivation. We said that for students, unfortunately, it seems that just passing for them is the main motivation, and they want to see a clear alignment between everything that they do and getting that pass result. So that needs to be really clear in the subject content. And like Elise also said, there's lots of competing priorities. So unfortunately, for many of our students, it's not about self-actualization, but just surviving.
Very good point. And Louise, Principle 5, need to know.
And sorry you can't see me, but looking at Principle 5, I guess we're hearing a lot of the same themes. We're really needing to check in on what is it the students are looking for. Is it just, I need to know this information for a job, versus do I need to know to get through an assessment for the end of coming out with my degree, and trying to build that broader understanding of the broader context of your learning. We talked a lot about the importance of self-reflection, but also just more, I guess, focusing on self-awareness and supporting our students through that journey of meeting them where they're at and encouraging that self-growth along the way. Again, our little group talked a lot about the demands on our students, and I think that's come through in every conversation, that there's people come with a lot of extra pressures in life, and how do we support producing the best end product of our professional person after they've been a student. Yeah.
Thank you, Louise. And finally, the last principle, orientation to learning. Chelsea.
So yes, we sort of discussed a few things that have been already mentioned, but I guess just reinforcing again that, spectrum of learning and the importance of scaffolding and making sure that, content and tasks are reflecting where students, are at developmentally, and recognizing their current skill levels and just, I guess, how that course, the course structure changes from, like first year students, through to postgraduate learning. So yes, and we also talked about, the importance, of lived experiences and what that brings to learning, and how it changes, people's motivations, people's intentions, and all of that type of thing. And that's probably enough, because you're going over time.
No, thank you, Chels. Yes, thanks everyone for hanging in there. We have gone over time, but make sure you add in your email via that link if you would like to get the summary of all those discussions. And I really thank you so much for all of your valuable input today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lucy and team and Tasfia. It's been great, and we'll see you at other sessions in the conference.
Thank you.
Bye.